A little after 8 p.m. on September 9th, 1954, Marilyn Bell, a 16-year-old young woman from Toronto, touched the breakwater wall just off Sunnyside Beach in Toronto and became the first person, man or woman, to swim the 32 miles across Lake Ontario, from Youngstown, New York on the American side to Toronto on the Canadian side. Marilyn and two other women all started swimming at just after 11 p.m. the night before, so her swim took 21 hours. Marilyn was the only one who finished. My dear wife Shauna first told me about Marilyn's swim in 1974, not long after we first met. Shauna knew about it because she was 10 years old and living in Canada in 1954 when Marilyn made it across and became a sensation in Canada that everyone knew about. It has taken me the 45 years since hearing the story to begin to understand and appreciate Marilyn's accomplishment and why it was important to Shauna. It is a powerful and beautiful story, and I hope this video gives you some inkling of that. The cast of characters includes Marilyn, her coach Gus Ryder from the Lakeshore Swim Club in Toronto, who had a passion for swimming that led him to coach long-distance swimmers and to teach children with disabilities how to swim. George Bryant, a reporter from the Toronto Daily Star newspaper. Joan Cook, a friend of Marilyn's from the Lakeshore Swim Club. Jack Russell, who piloted the Mapipa escort boat, and Lake Ontario itself. My niece Rosie Neefsey is the voice of Marilyn in the video, and her words come from Marilyn's article, The True Story of Lake Ontario.
There were no stars at 11 o'clock that September night, and no moon. It was overcast and windy, and very, very black. Taking a deep breath, I dove in, and so began the night that would change my life forever. When I surfaced and looked around, I couldn't see where the lake ended and the sky began. I couldn't see anything, so I just started swimming. When I had said goodbye to my coach Gus earlier, I was very worried about finding him in the escort boat. After what seemed an eternity, I finally heard Gus's voice. They had found me. Gus had a big flashlight, and he'd shown it just ahead of my stroke, saying, "Marilyn, just swim to the light, and I will get you across this lake." For the rest of the night, each time I extended my arm for the next stroke, my hand was reaching into that beam of light.
As described in June Callwood's article in Maclean's magazine, just a few weeks after Marilyn's swim, what Gus later called a crisis came around 4 in the morning. Marilyn, exhausted from fighting the continuous 12-foot-high waves that moved her up and down over and over and made her stomach ache like being seasick, stopped swimming and looked pleadingly at Gus.
"I'm cold. I'm numb."
"Marilyn," Gus shouted back, "you've swum all night and that's really great. If you can do that, you can do the rest. In another hour, the sun will come up, and it will be really nice." He fastened a paper cup into a ring at the end of a 6-foot stick, poured corn syrup into the cup, and passed it to the girl. She stood in the water, treading lightly to keep afloat. She sipped the nourishing drink and tried not to cry. Gus didn't offer to take her out of the water, and after a moment she let the paper cup float away in the darkness and started swimming again.
Gus kept me going any way he could, but when I realized the dawn was coming and night was almost over, everything changed. It was the most glorious sunrise I've ever seen, and one of the most wonderful moments in my life. I thought to myself, perhaps I'll be able to do this after all.
Gus realized Marilyn might need even more encouragement, so he had a water taxi bring out Marilyn's friend Joan Cook. But around 5 o'clock, Marilyn began to slow down again. June Callwood reported that Gus asked Joan to get in the water and swim alongside Marilyn for a while. "I can't swim in slacks and a blouse," she protested. "Take them off," suggested Gus. George Bryant, the reporter, assured her, "They won't take a picture of you."
I heard a splash, and suddenly Joan was right in my face, saying, "I'm here to swim with you, Marilyn, come on." She swam with me for a while, and I perked right up.
Joan then climbed back into the boat and pulled a blanket over her shoulders. Meanwhile, Toronto was going crazy. 2 radio stations were broadcasting bulletins every half hour from boats following Marilyn. 2 seaplanes flew over her. Offices began to empty, and there was a traffic jam between downtown and the lake. Kids got on their bikes and rode down to Sunnyside Beach, and yachts, motorboats, sailboats, kayaks, and rowboats began filling up the harbor, all waiting for Marilyn. And the lake currents kept pushing Marilyn 200 yards west for every 100 yards she went north towards Toronto. It got dark and cold as the moon rose, and still Marilyn kept swimming. As they approached the breakwater, June Callwood reported that Gus turned on his flashlight. The darkness along the shore ahead turned out to be thousands of people, screaming unintelligibly. A launch owner pushed on his horn, and the fleet unleashed a cacophony of horns, whistles, and sirens. Every man began to shout, and some to cry. The Mapipa pulled aside to let Marilyn go in to the breakwater alone. She touched it and stopped. It was 6 minutes after 8. She had been in the water 21 hours. The lake is 32 miles across, but she had swum 40 miles or more, fighting the currents.
At 8 p.m., after 21 hours in the water, I began approaching the shore. I was suffering from sleep deprivation and not really present, but my arms were still going. I later saw a film of the moment when I touched the break wall and an enormous roar went up from the crowd. But I don't remember that. I remember a lot of confusion, and finally, Gus's voice breaking through the haze. As they pulled me into the boat, I said, "What happened? Did I do it?" And that's when I heard Gus say, "Oh, Marilyn, you did it. You did it. You finished."
A few years ago, after Shauna had died, I made a pilgrimage to Sunnyside Beach because in her own way, Shauna had also made it to the other side of the lake. I believe Marilyn's story teaches us how we can help one another get there too, by shining whatever light we have and by swimming alongside for a little while. Thank you, Marilyn and Gus and George and Jack and Joan, and thank you, Shauna.